What's up, traders? Anthony Crudele here, and welcome back to 10-Minute Technicals. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to use my indicator beacon as a mean reversion tool. Now, if you didn't catch my last 10-Minute Technicals, I highly recommend that you go and check that out because it shows how I use Bollinger Bands to identify market environment. And that really leads into why I developed Beacon and how Beacon can be used as a tool for mean reversion. But nonetheless, if you didn't catch that video, you're still going to learn something here today. Now, let's talk about mean reversion. Number one, anytime I'm looking at a mean reversion move, my first thought process is always, I am mostly looking for mean reversion moves back into primary trend. I don't like looking for mean reversion moves against primary trend. What does that mean? It means that I primarily like the sell-offs in a bull market to find when I could see a mean reversion move that takes me back into primary trend, back into a bull trend, because that's the most powerful moves. Let's face it, unless you've been living in a closet, you know people love to chase bull markets. You know people love to chase things higher. Very few people chase things lower, right? I mean, unless we're in an environment where markets are just totally bearish, which like COVID or 2008, you don't see many of those time periods where people are chasing things lower. Most of the time, people are chasing things higher. Just the way of the world, especially when it comes to stock indexes. So I really look for mean reversion moves in markets that are in bull trends. You see a little bit of a sell-off, then you get a mean reversion back into that downward trend, which takes you into primary trend. This is so important. It's very much what we saw in August, at the beginning of August, that took us through the middle of August and now the end of August into September. What do I mean? Let's look at the Bollinger Bands. Here we have a daily chart candlestick and the E-mini S&P here on GoCharting. What I'm looking for is anytime we have this move lower like we did at the beginning of August, Bollinger Bands are expanding outward. You could see that, right? The move lower had range expansion back into primary trend. We had this steep move lower. Bollinger Bands are opening up because volatility is expanding. What do we look for when we're looking for a bottom, right? A mean reversion move. We look for volatility contraction. You could look at the VIX. I mean, obviously the VIX peaked on that day, but sometimes the VIX can stay elevated and the market can keep going lower. So it's important to look at something like that, but Bollinger Bands are going to act in a similar fashion because they're going to predict the future of volatility. So when Bollinger Bands start to come back inward, that is an indication that what has happened, that volatility is contracting now. So anytime you have a downward move in a bull market and Bollinger Bands are going outward and all of a sudden they start to come back inward, that's a signal. This is where Beacon comes into play. Now, I created Beacon many years ago, over 20, which is kind of crazy, but I did. And it was to help me get out of steam trains, right? Basically, moves that were going lower, all of a sudden I want to buy them, or moves that were going higher, I want to sell them. Love those. Not anymore, but we all have been there. And ultimately, what happens is I would always be way too early, and then eventually when the move would turn, all of a sudden I'd never catch it, right? I'd just be trying to fade it the other way. And so it was one of those things where I created it out of just tired of getting caught on the wrong side. So what it is basically a Fibonacci tool that is drawn from the Bollinger Band peak high to the Bollinger Band peak low. Okay. And what it does is it's not the 318, 618, it's 30%, 50%, and 70%. Okay. And so those areas are key for me because it basically boxes out what I'm looking for in the market. And I'm actually going to go and take my rectangle and I'm going to draw that here and I'm just going to box this out. This to me is the most important part of my mean reversion move. Okay. And how Beacons helped me tremendously. Once the Bollinger Bands have contracted back in, and we see that level. That's the level to watch. 53.17 was in the S&P. Once that happens, I believe the market's on its way to 55.04, which it did in just a few short days. I know many people are actually looking at this saying, well, way to say that we're going to rally from here when we're, almost 200 points off the lows. Well, look what happened. We rallied another 350 points. So to say that this market can't do way more than you ever think it can, that's why I don't try to pick bottoms. I wait for mean reversion moves using Beacon because if I could just catch this piece of the pie, I'm super happy, right? At least I have areas where I can manage risk. And as long as we have daily closes above 53.17, I thought the market was going to trade 55.04. Once we get a daily close above 55.04, I was looking for us to then go and trade up to 56.70, which we basically did. roughly there right now as I record. And so that yellow becomes that 50% pivot. It's a mean reversion move because we are coming out of a short-term bearish trend, right? But an overall bullish trend. That's why I say I look for mean reversion moves back into primary trend. Now, this is by far my favorite look. For a swing position, absolutely love it. If I wasn't on vacation in August, I would have been long. I did buy some stock, but nonetheless, this is absolutely my favorite. And especially when you see it across all the indexes, which we did see it in this Dow, Russell, NASDAQ, all very similar looks. Extremely important. Now I want to take you to a shorter term chart to show you how Beacon can be used on your short-term charts for mean reversion moves. All right, I pulled up a 3-minute chart and I put Beacon on the 3-minute chart with the Bollinger Bands. Now, as I mentioned, I like to use mean reversion moves back into primary trend. I don't like them going against trends. So it goes back to, where are we in the daily? Are we in a range expansion lower, higher, consolidation? That will determine what I look for during the day for Beacon. Obviously, this year we've been in such a bull market that almost all of the positions that I've looked for on my short term have been to the long side because the daily supports that. So what do I look for when I'm looking at my 3-minute chart with Beacon on it? I look for areas of opportunity where the market gets sold off and then the market tries to grind back up into primary trend. So I'm looking for buys. But I'm going to show you what shorts would even look like as well. I'm not going to take them, but nonetheless, I'll show you what they look like. Now, remember, this is a 24-hour chart. It's not just a regular trading hours chart. I'm just giving you more data to take a look at it. Here's a scenario right here where the market was grinding higher, and you could see right here in this moment that the Bollinger Band peaks have made a peak, and then Beacon started to come back down. And Beacon showed that once we got back below the 70%, it went to yellow. Remember I said my boxed in area was going to be that the red to the blue? And that's just a quick little scalp short if you were looking for one, not one that I would take. But it shows you that when a rally gets exhausted or a break, once those Bollinger Bands come in, Beacon will show you the possibility of a mean reversion back within that move, right? So its only really use is for mean reversion. It's not for trying to go with trend. There are some ways to do it, but mostly for mean reversion. Now let's take you to this scenario here that I would look for and really hope that we would get. So let's go and highlight this area. You have a move that goes lower in the market. As you can see here, range expansion, lower intraday, market just gets clipped. All of a sudden, Bollinger Bands start to come back in. What am I going to look for? Once this price is established in the short term, which came in at 56.07, which was not too long ago. Once this holds, I'm looking for the market to go and trade yellow, period. Rip back up, right? I mean, this again ended up getting into the overnight session, but nonetheless, I think it eventually did get it. If you look at it, yeah, it did take some time. But nonetheless, this is what you look for. You look for scenarios where the market gets exhausted in a direction, Bollinger Bands start to come back inward. And just like I showed you on the daily, it shows you the same setup on the short term. It helps me identify when a move is potentially ending. It's a turn in the market. It's a mean reversion move, but you want to be, once again, before I let you go today, a mean reversion back in primary trend. And in this bull market, I'm almost only looking for long setups unless something were to change in the short term. When you're looking at the indexes, I like mean reversion moves to the long side that could always change. It could change tomorrow. Who knows? But when we have a primary bull market, that's what I look for. And hopefully you found ways to use Beacon as a mean reversion tool.